Today we are going to make and decorate a pandan layer chiffon cake. We are also going to make trees and Santa with chiffon cake. Pandan flavored dessert is very well loved in Southeast Asia. Depending on where you are located, it may be hard to get fresh pandan leaves, but nowadays you can get these from the internet, so it's quite convenient. First, we'll have to make some pandan juice. Cut some pandan leaves and place them into a blender. Add some water to this and blend it. We want to add as little water as possible for them to be able to blend. We want to get the most flavor out of these, so if you put more water in there to blend, it will be more diluted and you won't get as much flavor. Strain the mixture to extract as much juice as possible. Next, prepare some paper cones to make trees and Santa. Cut parchment paper into triangle shapes. Size doesn't matter much. My square is about 9.5 inches. Fold both long ends to meet the short end to form a cone shape. All three corners will meet on the same side. Now tuck all ends in and secure it. This is it, super easy. You can also just buy paper cones online if you want to. We also need to prepare a base to secure the cones in place to bake. Use any cake pan that has some depth to it. I'm using my 8-inch chiffon cake pan. Wrap the top with aluminum foil. Poke holes that big enough to insert the cones where they can securely stand up. Let's make the cake. Mix the oil and egg yolks, then the coconut milk and pandan juice. Now sieve the flour in there and mix well. If you have seen my previous chiffon cake videos, you know that I always start with mixing oil and flour then other ingredients. That's the best and easiest way because first mixing oil and flour won't develop gluten. You can stir it any way you want and you don't have to sieve the flour neither. But for pandan cake, since I'm reducing oil to add the pandan juice, there's not enough oil to start with. So now I will sieve the flour to reduce mixing time. Plus, I'm mixing more gently, starting with sort of like a zigzag movement first, then continue stirring until it's all incorporated. The color is a little dull, so I'm adding just a little bit of green food color. Now let's whip the egg whites. Add cream of tartar to the egg whites and beat on high speed. Cream of tartar can stabilize the meringue. If you don't have it, you can add a small teaspoon of lemon juice or vinegar instead. You can also use a hand mixer for this. Both methods will work just fine. When you see big bubbles forming, add a third of the sugar. Continue to beat on high speed. When the foam becomes finer and silkier, you can add another third of the sugar. Continue to beat on high speed. The foam will continue to get silkier and you will start to see some trails. At this point, you can add the remaining sugar and beat on medium-high speed. Continue beating until you see some stiff peaks. After lifting the whisk, the meringue is stable and firm and the peak will not drip. Scoop about 1/3 of the egg whites to the batter and fold it in gently. This is to lighten the batter initially and prepare it for the rest of the egg whites. Once it's mixed well, change to a spatula and pour it into the egg whites. Continue to fold gently until it's all combined. Repeat this movement until the batter is homogeneous. Don't overdo it. Scoop half cup of the batter out and color it red. Transfer it to the piping bag when done. Next, scoop out 1.5 cups of batter and add more green color to it. Pipe the batter into the paper cones. You could just spoon batter in. I use piping bag because it's easier. Use a skewer to move it around to make sure the batter reach all the way to the bottom. Transfer the remaining batter to the cake pan. Shake it, tap it a couple of times to get rid of the big bubbles, and draw a few circles with a toothpick to flatten the surface. Place in the preheated oven and bake at 300 degrees. Take out the paper cones pan after 25 minutes. Flip the cone around and let them cool off completely on a cooling rack. Continue to bake the cake for 25 more minutes. Personally, I prefer to bake at 300 degrees for 15 more minutes, then increase the temperature to 320 degrees and bake for 5 more minutes. This is after a few testings with my oven as oven temperature varies. If I just bake at 300 degrees for 50 minutes, even though it's perfectly baked, the top of the cake will be a bit sticky after it's cool. So if you have the same problem, you can do the same switch. Once it's out of the oven, tap it on the table once, then cool it upside down. It will take 2 to 3 hours to cook completely. The cone cakes are cool, so we'll remove the parchment paper. When the cakes are cooling, they will shrink a little bit, and since the parchment paper is very light, they are not strong enough to hold the shape during the shrinking process. So after removing the parchment paper, you'll see some wrinkles. This is perfectly normal and is good for the trees because they are not supposed to look too perfect. But if this bothers you, you can buy the thicker paper cones. For the red ones, just cut out a small part in the middle and we'll complete the center later. For the green ones, you can just use it as is. But I'll cut them up, layering 2 or 3 parts to make a tree. To secure both parts, I'm using pretzel sticks. First, wiggle some room with a skewer or toothpick. Then insert the pretzel stick. Next, apply some marshmallow glue, then add the other part. You could just use a skewer for this. I use pretzel sticks because I have them available, plus it's always better if everything on the cakes is completely edible. I do want to mention the moisture in the cake will soften the pretzel sticks over time, so if you are not serving the cake on the same day, it will be better to just use a skewer or toothpick to connect the pieces. Making marshmallow glue is simple. Just put 1 marshmallow in a bowl, add a teaspoon of water, heat it in the microwave for 15 seconds, and stir until the marshmallow is dissolved. Now that the cake is cool, remove it from the pan carefully, then slice it into 3 layers. Remember to flatten the top as well. Now we're going to make pandan pudding. First, cut the gelatin sheets into smaller pieces and soak it in cool water to soften them. Add the coconut milk, water, sugar, pandan juice, butter, and salt in the pot. Cook on medium heat until the sugar is completely dissolved. Meanwhile, mix some water and cornstarch in a separate bowl. When the pandan mixture is just starting to come to a boil, turn the heat on low and add in the cornstarch mixture while whisking constantly. Keep stirring it and it will thicken up very quickly. Now turn off the heat and add in the softened gelatin. Be sure to squeeze out the water in the gelatin. Keep stirring until the gelatin is completely dissolved. Pour this through a strainer into a bowl. Let this sit for 10 minutes so it's not too hot before adding this onto the cake. At this time, we can get the cake ready. Apply some marshmallow glue on the cake board and put a layer of cake on there. Wrap the cake tightly with a cake collar and secure it with tape. Now scoop a layer of pandan pudding on there. Put this in the fridge immediately for 5 minutes. Now add another layer of cake and add another layer of pandan pudding. Put this in the fridge again for 5 minutes and repeat the steps. For the last pandan layer, the pudding is thicker now after sitting on the counter. So if you can't get a perfectly smooth top after you scoop it in, it's okay because it will be covered by cream later. But if you just want to make this pandan layer cake and a nice top is important, you can use a spatula and draw some texture line on top. Now let this set completely for 3 to 4 hours. Now let's finish this up. Let's make some whipped cream frosting. Combine heavy whipping cream and powdered sugar in a chill mixing bowl. Beat on high speed until it comes together. We only need very little cream, so feel free to just use some store-bought whipped cream for this. This is good. Remove the cake collar. Pipe some cream on top to make it look like snow dripping off the cake. We're not going to cover the entire cake because we want to show off the pandan layers. Now add the trees and complete the center. Use large round tip to pipe Santa's face and small round tip to pipe the buttons. Chocolate sprinkles for the eyes. Pipe some cream on the trees to look like snow. For the finishing touch, sprinkle some shredded coconut on top to create a more realistic looking snow texture. And this is now completed. Thanks so much for watching.